Peace, 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 everybody. It is the guy with the bow tie checking in with you live for another edition of Business with Benefits. Looks like JeJuan got too much into the music and dropped off, but she'll be right back.
I was having a dance party.
Nothing wrong with that. Well, welcome, folks. Welcome. I want to say first off, thank you to #TeamLive, #TeamReplay. However you consume the content, we appreciate it. Please let us know in the comments below as my comments finger get the dancing. And today we're going to talk about something that has been driving many folks crazy or making them happy at the same time. We're talking about remote learning. If you have been under a rock for some reason for the past, 6-7 months, COVID-19 is a thing. And COVID-19 has affected education just as much as it's affected travel and restaurants. So with that being said, the education model is kind of different. So this is something that Donovan Smith, a good friend of mine out here on LinkedIn, put together. We was talking about, let's talk about remote learning because people are having a hard time with it right now. So right now we have Miss Evelyn over there to your right. How you doing, Evelyn?
Hi, I'm doing wonderfully. How are you?
Good. We'll get JeJuan back here in a second. I think she had a bandwidth issue at the last second, but she'll get back in here. But while you're here, let us know what you do for the world so they can understand your context when it comes to education.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, I am super, super blessed and have found that my purpose in life is serving families and serving families through grace. I taught in public school for 12 years and then felt led to start my own company. I now serve families through a virtual homeschooling, tutoring, mentoring, and beyond company. And that's something that we do one-to-one and in small groups.
Perfect. So you've probably seen an uptick in stuff ever since COVID happened, I'm sure.
Yes, that we have. And we work with families in public schools, and we also work with families who've decided to do something a little bit different.
Okay, perfect. So with that being said, I want to catch up with being different with the comments we have from the audience real quick. We have Miss Kathy, and she let me know the Florida thing. I always say Kathy from Florida, so thank you, Kathy, for jumping in. Representing in another place where COVID's heavy. Both of us are in Georgia, but she's in Florida, which is also COVID hotspot. She had a comment, everybody thinks remote learning is new. Give me a break. I did it on Optum for 4 years ago. Yep, it's not new, Kathy. You're right. My son did online school for 3rd grade. He's in 7th now. He actually was with me every day in the office doing that with Georgia Connections Academy. Every single day he did schoolwork while he was in the office with me in 3rd grade. So it's definitely not new. And
I agree. Yes. And we've been serving kids online since 2019. So not super new, but that huge influx with COVID. And it was something that we were already doing. So we felt like we had a lot of confidence in that.
Good. And then you also mentioned that you're out there in Athens. I'm here in Cobb County. So it's kind of a different response to COVID. But what has COVID been like for you in the Athens area?
In the Athens area, we are a community that is definitely, hey, JeJuan, welcome back.
There she goes.
Yes, we are a community that's very concerned about COVID, and we are all taking precautions here in Athens, doing our very best to stay safe.
I appreciate that. And we have JeJuan Stewart. She is the parent coach portion of the show. Says, JeJuan, let people know what you do so they can understand your context when it comes to remote learning.
Oh, sure. And thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here with you parents. How are you doing this afternoon? I am a parent coach, and I focus on supporting engaged parents by connecting them to resources for their students. And I do that through coaching and empowerment. And I work with parents from all over the metro Atlanta area. It's just really my desire to speak life and encouragement into parents, to provide resources for them. First as an individual, building up who you are individually, and then also how you reflect that in your family unit and what that looks like for you developing your excellent parenting style for you and your family. So those are the kinds of things that I focus on.
And I'm sure you've also seen a lot more work for you because of COVID as well, probably, right?
Yes, it really has grown somewhat, and people are looking for just support, mainly just support in light of everything that's going on. Just someone to tell you that you are getting it right, you're doing it well, and managing what you have right now. It can be challenging. So, you know, just having a second set of eyes. We all have blind spots, right? So if you have somebody that's got your back and has a perspective maybe that you didn't see before, that can be really helpful, and that's what a coach can bring.
So this will make a good beginning part, because I wanted to ask the audience real quick, and you ladies as well, how do you feel about remote learning? So we had a comment earlier, remote learning is not new, but obviously it's the buzzword because it's been sped up. It probably was going to happen in 10 years, but because of COVID, it happened in 10 months. So I've dealt with remote learning just because my children have done that before, and I know there's ins and outs to it. But right now, I want to ask you two more specifically, how do you feel about remote learning when the brick and mortar is trying to do it? Because obviously there's online schools that have been doing this, but when it comes to the brick and mortar trying to do it, how do you feel about their execution of it so far? I guess we'll start with Evelyn.
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for this question. This is a question that I feel really, really passionately about. And again, in my company, we serve through tutoring and homeschooling, but there are so many families who have come to us from brick and mortar education. And to be perfectly honest, when it is these large group classes, we have so many children that are having trouble paying attention, slipping through the cracks. They're just one of many, many faces in that group, and the teachers are doing the very best that they can, and we know that. But whether they are missing tons of assignments and coming to us in a panic at the end of the 9 weeks, I am finding that remote learning is beautiful when it's served in small groups and served in one-to-one. If you're doing the public school thing, I would definitely encourage a support system, and that's what we do. And again, it's great to have somebody to have your back. Is your child turning in those assignments? Is somebody truly seeing your child and listening to them? Because every child and every team deserves a mentor and deserves that champion. So in remote learning, I believe in it, I do, but I believe in it when you have at least a portion of that remote learning, small group or one-to-one.
Okay, I like that answer. And then JeJuan, you're actually she mentioned the champion, so I'm sure you're seeing that side. So how do you feel about the parent side dealing with remote learning? Because it is a different stressor.
You can say that again. It is. It is definitely a different stressor, I think, for most parents. I'm so, all of my children are much older now, and I have grands that are going through this, as we discussed earlier. So it's quite a paradigm shift for parents to have to endure, and then to be thrust into it in the midst of COVID and everything else that's going on that you're trying to juggle and manage can be overwhelming. And I honestly think that I know that they're doing the best I piggyback on what Evelyn was saying with schools, trying to manage it with the best methods that they can at this time, using the resources and the support systems that they have. But one of the things that I would like to emphasize to parents is that, you don't need to do it alone. And you really need to reach out and get support. Don't burn yourself out. Don't feel like your question is not appropriate or it's not important, because it is. Usually if you have a question about something, there are hundreds of other parents that have similar questions that are just not comfortable asking. So it's important to develop relationships. I think the remote learning has challenged parents in the sense of building relationships with teachers, being more engaged and not just, it's almost like a matter of what my husband used to say years ago with our kids: you inspect what you expect. So you don't just leave them there on the computer saying, okay, they're learning, close the door and walk away, but coming back and making sure, are you engaged? Are you doing, do you have any questions? Just following up with them, I think is really a key and integral part. So it's challenging parents in a number of ways, but also it's an exciting time because I've heard of some parents saying that their children are doing much better with remote learning. They're thriving, they're excelling, they're really applying themselves because they can concentrate and focus on their particular area of interest without having distractions at schools that would normally take place, or they're seeing different sides of their children in that aspect. So I've seen both sides.
Okay, and then when you mentioned that follow-up thing, I'll say that's a big thing with online school, because when my son was in my office right there, I would just kind of hear the audio change, like, why aren't you listening? Or is your microphone on? And little stuff like that would help. So I could definitely say for people that are getting into online school, you do have to kind of watch it. I think that's a big misconception, is that you just let them get on the computer and go. But speaking of which, we have some comments from Kathy. She said, get the kids out the room, chain them in the closet, only kidding. And then Adam had a good comment. I think remote learning can be really powerful. However, these schools, I think, are using the wrong tools. There are so many great tools that have so much more than Zoom. So let's talk about that. We want to give some resources to parents. Zoom is one thing, and everybody's gotten used to Zoom being the education video platform. But JeJuan, what are some tools or resources that you notice have helped parents to deal with this new way of teaching?
Well, I think that from my perspective, in seeing what I've seen with parents that I've worked with, I think that when it comes to tools that are accessible to them, it's really getting back to the basics of communicating with your child. Communication, listening, speaking to them, challenging them. I just see those tools that are outside of technology, so to speak, unplugging technology and really engaging in those kinds of, conversations about how you're learning, what's going on in class, and really getting back to following up with their teachers and seeing how effective this is going. Don't wait till the end of the ninth quarter to, see that there's an issue going on or they're missing lessons or things like that, but getting involved in that component of it right away. I'm sure there are other tools out there other than Zoom that are being used specifically for learning. I know of some things such as learning pods that are coming into play, and a lot of parents are looking at developing, even if it's outside of school, enrichment pods for the students to get engaged and be able to connect with other students in smaller group settings. So I believe there are some opportunities there to develop and to grow in this season and in this time. And you have to do what's best for your family.
Yeah, absolutely. And Evelyn, share some resources you found helpful, because obviously you're helping coach and tutoring. So what are some tools you could say that have been helpful for families to get access to better education?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to echo JeJuan. And some schools use Zoom, some schools use Google Meet. There's a variety of platforms, but I really want to echo JeJuan in saying get a team, get a support system of people in place. One thing that's so beautiful right now that I see for resources are neighbors helping neighbors, grandparents helping the parents, having communities come together. That is something that is so beautiful right now. And one place I want to recommend that you go is my website, EvelynEducation.org. And I would love to, and the reason why I say that is I would love to connect with you, because I am a human support system. And one thing that I want to do is hold your hand, just like JeJuan would do for the parents. I'm going to do that for you too. Hold your hand through the entire online learning process and be there with you every step of the way to make sure that you feel comfortable and confident. And your child, we see your child, we see your team, we get to know their birthday, their hobbies, their all of the things that make them so excited, and we meet them where they are. So my strongest thing that I would chime in is get a support system, whatever that looks like for your family.
And speaking of the support and the getting comfortable, a question Courtney Herring had in the post up to this was asking about, should there have been a transition to this? Should there have been a easing into this? So I have my thoughts about it, that it kind of seemed slapped together. But how do you ladies feel, as people that work with parents and education? How do you feel like, should there have been like a lull or something to this, you think? Evelyn, I'll let you take it first.
Okay, sure. Something really amazing happened last spring. And when teachers were in this big transition, and I was in public school for a long time and still have a lot of friends in public school, teachers were busting it and they were coming together. How do we make this work? How do we transition online? And teachers were helping teachers in a way that was so beautiful. And parents were cheering on teachers back in the spring. And they were coming up with systems, and teachers always had each other's back, which is so beautiful. Now, one thing that I've noticed in the fall is that this is when there's been a lot of negative press as far as teachers go. And I just really want to echo, whatever system you choose, the teachers are definitely doing their very, very best. So much to say on that. I think that even though teachers have been thrown into this, let's definitely give them the support that they need, and just know that some teachers have been in the technology game longer than others. But let's give them grace. And whatever you do, get a support system for your family. That is so important, so that your child is not just a number.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that the spring definitely was kind of, we're figuring this out, but people have kind of felt more negatively about the fall. But how about parents, JeJuan? How are the parents responding right now when considering, Georgia went back to in-person class instruction, so there's a hybrid mixture. So how have you seen the parents you're working with responding to that?
I think that parents were a bit disappointed that we couldn't go back to school at first. It's like the shock of reality hits in, and it's like, okay, this is not going to be as we anticipated it being. So we're going to have to kind of reboot and recalibrate here as a family unit what this looks like for us. So I think as parents, it's been a challenge, and it has been something that most parents have had to really take a thought as to, am I going to have my child in school? Am I going to have them at home? Do I have the resources to be able to have them at home and teach them at home? There's just so many things that are at play. Then if you add that on top of, if you have a special needs child or a special needs situation, which I'm familiar with from my family standpoint, because one of my grandchildren is, and those are challenges you have to kind of include in the mix, how you're engaging and how are they going to be able to get the support that they need during these times. So I think it was a bit overwhelming. I think in the midst where at the beginning, the teachers were getting support, they were seeing their level of support needed for each other. They band together, just like Evelyn said, they have each other's back. I think unfortunately for many parents, we are not in that set right now. And that parents are looking at it saying, who's helping me? How am I going to get to the next step with my family? I want my child to succeed. I don't want them to fall behind during this time. You hear so much about what children have fallen behind on in this, even with the short span of the summer. The numbers are just really critical in what they're lacking in. And then a lot of students may not have access to Wi-Fi. They may not have access to the things that are out there, that they need to excel. And then parents have to work. So then you have to put those pieces all together. So it's a bit overwhelming, I think, for parents in this season. And I think it's really important for the government and for others that are in place, policymakers that are in place, to really reconsider, how they are engaging and helping parents at this time, providing tools, resources, whether it be locations. I've seen locations that are set up for parents to be able to have their kids drop off their kids at those locations, and strict COVID guidelines are served there, and the students can work on their homework, but it's not at home, but it's in a safe place where they can be able to do their learning and get the support that they need while the parent is at work. So we have to look at alternative ways and be open to ideas to really help parents and support parents during this season, because it can be a lot. And I believe that it still is. And we haven't really overcome these things yet. I think that we're just in the beginning for testing all of these things out. So just be ready for making a pivot, making a change.
And I made me think about something. I don't mean to cut you off. Let me think
No,
about
you're
something
fine.
that Courtney had asked. Actually, she asked, how do parents transition their home into a working environment when the parents are working from home? So how do you make your home into a homeschool environment when you're working from home too? Because usually with a homeschool environment, it's like a school kind of setup. So it's more like mom or dad goes to work, other parents in homeschool. It's never really the two meet. So what are some tips and tricks people can use to kind of make their home more accessible for remote learning while they're working from home as well? Evelyn, you could take that one first.
Okay, absolutely. I love that question. One thing that we have to know in 2020 is to be flexible, and that our Zoom meetings are going to be imperfect. We're going to have the dog barking. We're going to have kids running around in the background. There's so many hilarious things that have happened in Zoom meetings in 2020. And so we have to step back a little bit and know that things are not going to be perfect, and that's okay. With remote learning, one thing that I want parents to think about is you now have this freedom and this opportunity. If you choose to do remote learning, you can choose the time of day that your kids learn best. You can spend your lunch break with them, working on something together. If you do remote learning and you have a small group, your child might love standing and learning and dancing and learning. You can set up your day. There's some families who homeschool and do the school as their child feels comfortable. Some kids blossom and peak in the afternoon. Some kids love working first thing in the morning. But there needs to be fluid, but also structure. There needs to be an area that is fluid and an area that is structured. I think sharing a space and everybody having that respect in that space, this is the time that dad needs to work. Dad needs for all of us to work on our quiet activities right now so that dad can work in his office. This is the time that we can all be loud and play together. So it's going to look different for every person. And whatever type of schooling you have selected, shift with your family accordingly and make it work for everybody. But let's be real. It's going to look messy some days, and let's just support one another, support our neighbors, and support our families.
I like that. And then, JeJuan, how about yourself? What do you think are some ways to make the home better designed for remote learning and working from home?
You know what? I agree in regards to what Evelyn was saying, is that it fits. You got to find a fit for each family. I also think that as you're developing out your location, think about your time slots. Think about doing things in modules as opposed to having to do it, like straight through. Being flexible with your time in the sense of you might do science on certain days, and it may look like you do an outside project or an inside project. There are just different ways that you can engage with that. And then you can also use excursions, like getting out of the house. I'm a big advocate for unplugging and plugging into each other through conversation and engagement. So how you can find ways to be able to reattach to your child through their social and emotional learning, finding out things that they like to do, asking them questions about things that are interesting to them. And other than just, what grade did you get? Did you study for this test? But find out more about why it is they're learning what they're learning, the meaning behind it. The questions we ask, the things that we really look at as important, the students are going to be able to reflect on that. And if you are stressed as a child, as a parent, your children are going to feel that stress. They're going to sense that stress.
They notice that quickly.
Right. Absolutely. And so, really being able to unplug and schedule times where we're just taking a break. This is a break time. This is a Selah moment. We're going to go outside. We're going to enjoy the day. We can get back to this. It's not like, we are held to the strict rule. And just like Evelyn was saying, you can be flexible and to really allot yourself grace in this time as a parent, that things are not going to always go just as you planned it. You might have it all planned out 1, 2, 3, but then something's going to happen and you may not have Wi-Fi that day. Things may not work out. You may not get access. Something bounces you off. All right. It's a moment. Reboot. We'll do something different. and then having those things available to be able to do something different way.
Yeah, this brings up the fact of the one size fits all thing, because Marlon had a comment about this actually. He says, how do you approach kids teaching wise as it relates to their personality, introvert, extrovert, autism spectrum? This is not a one size fits all. This should be taken into account even more so now, which I think this is kind of geared towards the parents, because we don't have the experience. Like, I'm fortunate my wife was a teacher for 10 years, so she knows how to deal with different personalities. For me, I don't have that, I just know this is how I learned. So how do parents, JeJuan, I'll start you with this one. How do parents approach that teaching wise when we've only learned how we learn? How do parents kind of deal with that when it's kind of the offline work?
And when you're thrown into it for the first time, it can be a lot to have to absorb. You may have to go to Google and look up some things that you didn't know before. You might have to go and do some research on your own, or even talking to your teachers that are teaching your students to find out, what are the best ways that you notice that they learn or that they picked up things. You have to be open to change. And that's the first thing, having a changed mindset that your child may not learn the same way you do. And understanding that they're kinesthetic learners, they're auditory learners. And I'm more of a visual learner. So if I see it and you show me how to do it, then I can do it, or I can try to emulate that. So if you understand these different ways, and there's so many resources out there online that you can start to do a little, just training yourself, like, okay, I see they're not quite getting it this way. And I've seen I've seen parents go online and go on Facebook and say, you know what, I've got this issue with my child. I'm trying to teach them this subject. Can you help me? And they'll be inundated with all kinds of support simply because teachers want to help you succeed. There are teachers out there that see that and they'll say, oh, well, this is what you should use. Your child's in 4th grade. This is what I would use. This is how you can approach this subject. There's just so many resources there that are there if you ask and if you just seek them out. So I just want to encourage you to do that as parents. Don't feel like you have to parent in a vacuum or in a silo. You're not. So the more you can get out of that mindset of thinking and realize you're not the only one with those questions, and present it to them and get the resources that you need and the support you need, that's huge. And then you'll feel so much more accomplished. And it's like, oh, okay, I've learned something new today. That makes me think of math. Math is the biggest thing, and Evelyn, you could probably speak to this more. I feel like math is the biggest subject where people have the I didn't learn this way. Because, language, you can't really change too much, in my opinion. And science, you can't change too much. But math, there's like 10 different ways to do multiplication and division.
Yes.
Like, I have a math degree, so when my kid brings home something like, hey, this is how I did this, I'm like, what is that? That's not how you do multiplication.
It looks so different.
Yeah.
One thing I want to throw in real quick, a couple of resources for you guys. Amazing Educational Resources is a group on Facebook that is wonderful. And like JeJuan was saying, if you are looking for a resource out there, or if you are trying to figure out how your child learns, it's called Amazing Educational Resources. That's a Facebook group. There are tons of parent Facebook groups out there, and we are all in this together. So this is the time to say, I have a learner. This is what I'm seeing. Please help me. And parents are diving in together. Specifically with my team, with the Mrs. Evelyn Educate team, we're a team of 10, and we are specialists in all of the different forms of learning that are out there. We have an autism specialist. We have gifted education specialists, elementary school specialists. So I really want to emphasize getting a support system in place. Start with Facebook. There is a Facebook group for everything, and people want to help people in this season. They really do.
Yes, I couldn't
agree
with you more.
Find some help. Get some help with somebody else. And Catherine actually had a comment. She said, shut down at normal hour. Something can wait until tomorrow. Detach.
Exactly.
Get a separate space where you can close out the world. Unplug.
I agree. Yes. I agree.
Marlon said, great point, JeJuan, regarding how to interact with children and how to ask questions. And I heard that. So the Salam moment. He heard you there, sneaking that in there. Real quick, I want to make sure the person that helped set this all up, I want to make sure we get his moment real quick. So I'm going to catch you guys on the other side of our Bow Tie Nation moment.
Okay.
It's bow ties for life.
Yay,
Donovan Smith.
Go, Donovan.
If you guys have not seen Donovan, I got his problem right today because he did a math problem with variables and prime numbers or something. Donovan always puts out these great infographics or worksheets he makes up on his own with different people from LinkedIn or different political figures and news events, and have people solve them. So I can easily say Donovan's the reason a lot of us have practiced variable math and equations since graduating college and high school. Because some of the people that answer like, I haven't done a math problem in 20 years. I haven't done one in 5 years. So Donovan, thank you for helping set this up, because he and I were talking about education, and he's tied up right now. But thank you, Donovan, for setting this up. So the resources are all about there. They're all about, and it's something that Courtney had mentioned. That was another question. The question she had was about private teachers. This is a new thing she mentioned. What do you guys think about private teachers? What is this trend of people saying, I'm just going to have a teacher come to my home and they're just my teacher, kind of like a doula or a home nurse? So how do you ladies feel about the private teacher model and that changing in the next coming years?
I absolutely love it. I think this is a beautiful time in education, and it takes me back to an early American education where we had this small schoolhouse style, where you had a mentor, where you had a content specialist in a small group. And I think there's something so beautiful that has happened in 2020 that has made us all slow down. It made us all slow down and just really reflect. And I think so much of this, I am a woman filled with faith. And in that faith, I find that slowing down, focusing on the family, and just looking at things a little bit differently. We have enjoyed not being go, go, go all of the time. But I think now is the time to think differently. It's a different season. We are not gathering in large groups all of the time. I mean, it just depends on your comfort level. But I love teachers coming into the home. I love nurses coming into the home. And especially for our special needs learners and our learners that learn differently, they need the small groups. And there are some students who have to have that teacher in person. So I love it. This, again, unite with your neighbors, join your neighbors, help within your family, within the grandparents and the parents. I love this idea and definitely support it.
Well, JeJuan, what do you think about that? Because parents are kind of struggling with resources. So obviously the private teacher coming into the home has a financial implication to it. But the idea of just getting out of the public school and into maybe you're in a cohort or a pod. What are your thoughts on that being a new emerging trend?
But you know what? I feel like there's a need and a place for it. Otherwise, it would not be here. Okay. I feel like there are benefits to that. And I feel like there are parents that could really utilize that in a very positive way for their children's best experience to learn. Now, for those parents that are not in that position to be able to do that effectively, then you have to look at alternatives and what that can potentially look like. However, if you can, and if it looks like your family needs that and you can afford to do that, I think that that's a great resource and a great tool.
And I think you're a good segue. I mean, you're a good segue, I think, because if somebody's in public school and they say, I don't have 50 grand, 40 grand, whatever the figure is for a private teacher,
exactly,
but I need someone to help me here and there. You're kind of like an advocate for them.
Absolutely. I can become that coach and that support for you to help you navigate those things and give you the resources and tools to be able to effectively, teach your child and support your child in their success. A lot of what I do is really focused on building up the leader and the parent, because a lot of times parents have relinquished that to the teacher. And so you have to learn how to gather that back up again, the leadership skills that you are endowed with and you can be able to groom and grow with, and you can be able to learn skills, and there are resources out there to help you to become better in those areas that you are not as strong in. And you can help your child and your family as a whole in that process. So yes, there is definitely, that's a place where I could definitely come in.
And that made me think about something when we're talking about this model of remote. Andrea Wilson put a comment on the post about Zoom wasn't designed for small children. that as they're staring at the screen, I mean, I see my 12-year-old is probably more focused, and my 10-year-old is kind of over the place. So it's like a kid's moving in the side over here. What's that? Or the screen flash. What's that? So for the parents that are kind of trying to grapple with this, because we have this mindset still of, I don't want my kid to fail, but the environment isn't the best situation for us. So for Evelyn, for you working with different age kids and working with that home environment, what are some resources or tools or just ideas for parents to make Zoom work? Because Zoom isn't made for kids, but how do you make it work for these kids?
I am so glad you asked. This is something I'm really, really passionate about. I believe that students do not need to be on Zoom for hours and hours and hours. I think that is terrible. And if you look at the model for what kids need, you can be an effective learner when you're little, in little 30-minute chunks, little 15-minute chunks.
Exactly.
Our littles do not need to be on Zoom for hours. I think when we try to emulate a traditional public school day and we take that format and we put it on Zoom, it's just not the same. We need the breaks. Even as adults, we don't want to be on Zoom forever. So we need to be really, it's exhausting.
You get burnt out.
We really need to be cognizant of that. If you're in middle school, 1.5 hours, that's all you need. You know, if you were in high school, just a couple of hours, but we all need those breaks. And I think we really need to shift our mindset. Instead of first period, second period, third period, I think we need to start thinking about, okay, let's do a science chunk. Take a break, go play, go outside, unplug, like JeJuan was saying, unplug, and then come back together at a different time when you're fresh. But I think asking students to sit for hours and hours behind a screen is very negative, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is where my wife helps me, because she's teaching our 2-year-old now, which I'm proud she wrote her name today. She wrote her name by herself.
Oh, that's nice.
But I push sometimes, like when we're like at night, and I'm like, oh, let's read a little longer. She's like, she's 2. She's been reading and stuff all day. But I'm in my mind like, no, it's period after period. But I think that's the issue the public school model has with online, because we forget that shifting classes took 10 minutes, 15 minutes, where I get Zoom fatigue, where I'm going meeting to meeting. Like before I got on with you ladies, I was on a Zoom before, or a Blue Jeans call. So I'm going from like meeting to meeting, and people think, oh, you're just sitting there. It's not a big deal. Well, you're thinking the whole time. Mental fatigue is a real thing. And Adam even added on here, no one needs to be on Zoom for hours and hours.
Yes, brother.
I agree, Adam. So true.
So for parents, so think of it, that's the challenge too, I think, JeJuan, is that the parents are on Zoom meetings all day and the kids are too. So is there a place where a parent should kind of go with their boss and be like, hey, my kid's in online school. I can't be talking to you all day on Zoom or Slack or whatever you're using. Do you think that's something parents should be stepping up saying to kind of help make things better on the job and off the job?
No, I believe what you're raising is a very key point with what's going to happen as we move further into this experience that we're going through. I think you're going to find more and more parents being able to assert themselves in regards to engaging with their families, putting their families as a priority when it comes to educating their children at home. It's going to require them being able to say, and require the employers to look at it and say, you know what, I want you to be effective. I want you to be able to bring your best self when you're on Zoom. So we know if you're on there and you've been on there for 4 or 5 hours and you're just not as focused. And if your child's in the background and not really concentrating and doing their work, then that's going to distract you as well. So being able to put those things in and let the employers know those things, I think it's really important for the parents to be able to do that. And there are ways that you can do that. Let it be noted. It may not be something you can change immediately, but it's important to just make them aware, because if people do not know what your issues are, they may or may not have children of their own at that age. They may or may not understand what's going on in your household. But I tell you, they want you to be able to be effective and bring your best self to your job. So in order for you to
some
do
comments
that,
on that, people, let us know how many hours you're on Zoom or WebEx or Blue
and how it
Jeans
affects.
or Join Me.
No, because I mean, that's a real scenario. I don't work from home per se, but I can only imagine if you do that all the time, and then you have your children at home too, and you're trying to balance. I can imagine that could be a really big disconnect in an area of angst for any parent.
Yeah. Well, so
Right.
my family's big on other educational sources if we could find that. So, JeJuan, you mentioned getting out the house and the free resources of being out in nature is one resource for mental disconnect. Evelyn, what are some different sites or worksheet places or something that parents can use that are low cost or no cost to help them supplement what they're getting from the online school experience?
Oh, absolutely. Common Lit is one. Commonlit.com. News ELA is a great tip for free articles. Again, amazing educational resources on Facebook is huge. There are lots of math games. I want Donovan to chime in. I wish he was on this meeting. There's
Yes.
so many math games that kiddos can play. There's lots of apps out there. ABC Mouse is really good, and that's really affordable. It's excellent as well. There's so much out there. There are these top YouTube channels that are out there that are also really effective for our learners. But you wanna have it all in moderation, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Too much screen time is that's where we were looking at the difference with recently at Cobb County versus I think Fulton County, where Cobb County, my kids are probably online school is like 9 till 2, give or take, and then she was saying her kid was like 8 till 6 or 8 till 5, and as a parent, she's like too much screen time is too much screen time.
Yes.
Even if it's educational, it's
Right.
still staring at a screen, and I just wonder. I talked to my son about sitting too close to the screen. Like you're gonna have horrible vision by the time you're 20 because you've already had sped up. Like where I didn't see a computer till I was 16.
Right.
Even staring at one since he was 8. So
Exactly.
for parents to kind of think about that, there's moderation of this obviously is important, but we have this stress of the grades had to be turned in and all that. So JeJuan, is there kind of a pushback that parents should be able to have to say, hey, my kid needed a break. I'm sure you did. Is there any kind of grace or wiggle room they have with the teacher to kind of not have that be so stressful?
Well, you know what? I think that is there grace? Yes. Is there wiggle room? Yes. But you have to make it, meaning that you have to be the one to bring that to the attention of the teachers, to the educational staff, the principal, to see if there's some recourse that you have, especially if the situation is one such in your with your county that you're doing a hybrid model and things like that. If you need to get assessed, have your child assessed in the sense of a social worker or someone else kind of evaluating that screen time, how it's affecting them, that might be a recourse as well. Because, it's really important. Everybody's under stress. It's really important that you minimize that and mitigate it as early as you can. So if, as a parent, you're noticing things that are not quite working right for your family and for your child in this season, the earlier that you can address it, bring it up to the attention of the teacher, looking at the counselor and other folks that are there and available for you to resource with, I think you should do that, definitely. It's going to help your child succeed.
I had no clue what the resources available till my wife has to let me know. I'll keep giving her shout outs because I probably would have been the parent, just go to school and come home. I would have not known or dug into all the different assessments and counselor things that I didn't need it as a kid. So I wasn't aware of it as myself because I never had to use it. But my son may or my daughter may need to do that. And speaking of resources, Marlon said such a great and action-packed show today. This is super awesome. Teachers rock. And I 100% agree.
I do. I wanted to share one resource.
Real quick, Anna had a funny comment.
Yeah,
Anna said late to this live because I had dealing with a virtual learning meltdown. We'll catch the replay as well. Anna mentioned a good point before this. She had shared her daughter is in online school and she's having a hard time. So there's a picture of her crying, kind of dealing with online school without her computer. So have you guys seen any kind of a temperament change or temperature or self-esteem change because of online school? JeJuan, I'll let you start with that and answer the question you was thinking about too.
No problem. Yes. And I would gather to say, and I don't know specifically, I don't know the numbers, I don't have the research behind it, but I would gather to say that yes, there probably is some type of change, because you're talking about the drastic change that we've gone to from being in person, classroom structure style teaching and educating our children to shifting gears completely to online. And that's a huge paradigm shift for any child they have to mitigate through. So, and then with the expectations of parents, the expectations of meeting getting the assignments done at a certain time. If you can't get into a particular site, it's easy to have a meltdown in regards to, I have meltdowns on my computer when it's not working right. So I can only imagine if I had to do it for a grade. So it's like, I just, it can be challenging. So yes, I could say yes from that point of view. But I think it's really important that for parents to connect with their child social and emotionally during this time. And if there's a way that you can carve out some time to do some games, whether it be board games, whether it be work on some projects together that are kind of fun and lighthearted, take the pressure off of it, and say, yes, that did happen again today. Ah, man, all right. So we'll just, let's take a break, high five break, do something like that. Let's get something to eat. Let's go back. Okay, let's regroup, reboot. Okay, let's see what happens. And just kind of make it fun as opposed to, melting down completely, which we have a tendency to do. I have a resource for you as parents. It's through Search Institute, which is a really great tool for parents to use. They have a lot of insightful resources for you, ways that you can evaluate your skill sets as a parent and support your child. And it's www.searchinstitute.org. If you get a chance to go to that, I think you'll find a lot of what they do is focused on developmental relationships. And I really embrace this philosophy and way to engage with your children more effectively and more intentionally. So some of the tools that I use when I work with parents are there. And I just think that, the more you can pull these resources from left and right, to kind of, you bring them into your family and you use it in a way that works for you. And if you need help in figuring out what that looks like, I'm here.
Perfect. And what we'll try to do as well is when this is done, we'll try to go back into the chat and put the links. That way, all of you can get to it easily. And Evelyn, I wanted to ask you something because you're in the homeschool space, but also in kind of the private school space a little bit. So I kind of thought when this happened, my wife did as well, there'd be like a mass exodus, or not mass exodus, but a lot of people saying, hey, I'm going online school. I'm going homeschool all the way. So with that trend, for people that are concerned about homeschool, do you have any kind of insights or reflections on the homeschool experience now? Because since it's more popular and an ever-present thing, what is your feedback on the homeschool experience versus the traditional school experience?
I personally have changed so much, and I only saw things from a certain way when I was a public school teacher. And I love public school, and public school serves so many, and it's a great fit for tons of kids. However, since I have entered the homeschooling arena, my mind has completely shifted into this openness, this flexibility, this belief that your child gets to learn as a beautifully, wonderfully, unique, created individual. And it has been the most rewarding experience to serve families and to work with learners on an individual basis, focusing on their gifts, focusing on their interests, focusing on their talent. That is something that this opportunity has led me to do. But I also want to say for students who are in public school, we also work really well with students in public school because, again, I'm really big on that one-to-one setting so that you have your champion, so that you have your person. So public school is for many, many families, and it is great. But I do think you need to have your champion. private school, homeschool, there's more flexibility there. And I have found a lot of my special needs learners or learners who even want to graduate early, they come to us as well. So it's not a one size fits all. Sometimes I call public school conveyor belt education because you're just shipping them in and everybody's having a pretty similar experience. But when you enter the world of homeschool, it's uniquely designed for your child. And I love that.
Yeah, I love that analogy. It's kind of like the Ford, Model T assembly line versus the Bentley being handmade in Germany, I think it is.
Customized.
Yeah, but that's important, I think, because the education system has been kind of rocked by COVID, especially the higher education system, that colleges are having mass outbreaks because the main people that get COVID, some things have shown, were 20 to 44 years of age.
Exactly.
Which is college. A lot of that's college age. So for the people always worry about, well, can I go to college if I go to homeschool? If I do bad in this online school thing, can I go to college? To kind of close things out, JeJuan, I'll have you start this. How do you feel the evolution of higher education is going to happen based on COVID right now?
Ooh, that's a very good question.
Bum, bum, bum.
I think it's going to be forced to really expand. It's going to be forced to really simplify. It'll expand in some areas, meaning that there's going to start taking more different kinds of students and minimizing some of the requirements that we thought were so important that we're going to see that are not as important. Like you heard about some schools not requiring SAT or ACT this year because students were not able to take it. I think there'll be research probably performed on these students to see how well they adapted. What did they do? How effective was that? And then we'll go back and look at that down the road. We're going to see a lot of things happen, I think, in the area of parent engagement expanding and parents seeing their value and their worth in the area of educating their child again from home and supplementing what is being taught at school. I was a parent that I had my child in private school, public school, and I homeschooled them. So I understand all of those venues in very different ways. And I had reasons why I did each one in the season that I did it for my children. So I do not, look at someone who has to make that choice for their child in a way like, well, what are you doing? I look at it from the standpoint of you're doing what's best for your child in that season. And you have to look at the resources that are there and accessible to you to make it better for your child to be successful. So I really am very, very serious about that focus being changed. It's going to expand in some ways and it's going to contract in others to really funnel in to what is important. I'm a chemistry major. So when I look at that, I look at synthesizing something and getting it down to the most critical element, what's most important. And we're going to see that within the next few years, I believe.
I like that. Okay, Evelyn, how about you? What do you see as the evolution of higher education as a result of COVID-19 now?
I think there's so much to think about with that question. And on my end, you have to think about how you want to prepare for that. You have to think about what your goals are. And I'm thinking about higher education differently than I ever have before. You want to get the most bang for your buck. You want to think about, since higher education is looking a little bit different, there are some programs out there like Sophia Learning where you can take some classes online and go ahead and knock out your freshman year of college at a fraction of the cost because that higher education looks different. Trade schools are huge right now, and preparing for trade schools is great. I think the most important thing about higher education is finding your gift, your talent, and recognizing that there's a million different paths that you can take, and finding a support system to help you figure out the best path for you. College is for many, but it's not for everyone. That's and learning what's out there that you can do at an affordable rate is really, really wonderful. And finding somebody to walk you through that journey is critical to me.
I want to piggyback on that, Evelyn. I think what you're hitting on is very important to emphasize with parents is that you can use this time now to really discover what your child's strengths are, what their spark is. What's that spark that keeps them interested? You have that quality time with them now that you can see some things in them that you probably haven't even noticed before because you were so busy. And now you can look at it and say, wow, I didn't know you really could draw like that. I didn't know you were very interested in that. I didn't, and with that brings up something that you can do as a parent to bring in resources to them to expand on that and to help them grow in those areas. When you do that, they get a love for learning. It may not be math, it may not be science, but they're learning. And those are the things that you want to harp on, you want to build on. That desire to question, to be curious, to want to know more, to dig a little bit deeper. All of those things are things that you can really delve into right now in this season with your child. And that's going to help them grow into the young person that you want them to be.
Is he at the time now, not fighting traffic as much as he used to? But ladies, thank you for this information. I was looking forward to this just because education is changing a lot, much like everything else is changing. But this is the angle that I want to make sure people can reach out to you. So for people that want to learn more about your work, Evelyn, where should they go for you?
EvelynEducates.org. Would love to see you there. Let's absolutely connect. I would love to serve you.
And Evelyn, are you on other platforms besides LinkedIn? For people that want to use social?
I'm on Facebook under 2 places, Evelyn Shaw Corley. I would love to connect with you there, and also Mrs. Evelyn Educates. I'm not on Instagram a whole lot. I may need to pick that up a little bit, but Facebook and EvelynEducates.org and LinkedIn Evelyn Shaw Corley. That's how you can find me, and I'd love to connect.
All right. And JeJuan, how about you? How can people learn more about your parent support situations?
Well, first of all, I would just love to have you connect with me on Facebook at www.JeJuan.co. And that's also my landing page. You can reach me there. I do these series called Pep Talks, and I have a pep talk coming up next week. I would love to have you come. I'll have some guest speakers there talking about how we really learn. And I think it'll be a wonderful time of engagement for parents if you're interested, as well as I am also on Instagram at JeJuan.co. So you can reach me there as well.
Perfect. Well, people, if you had to get some information for your kids, show the grandkids, or if your children have kids, show them. This is a situation where if it takes a village, as they say, and this is the village to help you out with everything education. And Donovan, I know you couldn't be on here, but when you watch the replay,
we missed you, Donovan.
Love you, Donovan.
Well, thank you, ladies. We will catch you all next time on Business and Benefits. Please be safe. And on my political hat, early voting starts in our state. All of us are in Georgia. It starts next Monday. October 12th is when early voting starts. If you've not been looking on the news, the lines are massive already in other places. My dad's in Virginia. So, Dad, if you're watching, I hope you voted already. I need to yell at you if you haven't. But early voting has started already in some places. It starts in Georgia next week. Please go vote. Make sure you're ready to go. Plan to vote, prepare, and be persistent. We will catch you next time on Business Benefits.
Love it.